Can I ask you something, Miss Evelyn? Do you know what her pain is? Because the only reason a person would behave in this manner,
we're not gonna throw this behavior word around again. We're not gonna do that. She does not have a behavior problem, and that's not fair. Because I don't appreciate you keep throwing out these names. That is what about my disrespect? All I have been is disrespectful. I've been called. Wait a minute!
What if everything you thought you knew about the Braxton family turned out to be wrong? For years, Tamar has carried the label of the messy sister, the chaotic one who can't hold on to a relationship or stay out of the spotlight for the wrong reasons. Every few months her name trends again, and it's never for music or awards. It's another fallout, another accusation, another public situation that makes people shake their heads and declare she'll never change. Here's what might surprise you though. The deeper you look into this family, the clearer it becomes that Tamar isn't the disease, she's the symptom. And the real problem starts at the very top, with someone nobody ever wants to hold accountable.
Letting your mother run your life.
How dare he try to tell me how to raise my kids after he have abandoned us. He has some nerve.
Y'all have lives to live yourself, and she can't run her life, her home, and your home.
But where were you?
What
Out there being in the street,
What did you do
doing
all
whatever
day?
you were
What
big
did you
enough
do
to do.
all day long?
What did you do?
What did
And
you
what
do?
did you
Over a decade of reality television has made the Braxton family a household name. Chart-topping music, explosive arguments, heartbreak and betrayal and reconciliation, they've delivered all of it and then some. Enough drama to fill 100 seasons and still leave fans wanting more.
Because everything she said she thought was right.
Pitiful lie, too.
And as long as you agree with her, she's fine. And it's the same thing with y'all. If y'all don't agree with her, she is pissed. And it's time for y'all to stop letting your mother run your life.
Lately though, people have started connecting dots that reveal a very different picture of who the real problem might be. Spoiler alert, it's not the person you've been blaming all along. The one everyone has protected this entire time might actually be the one causing the most damage. Tamar makes it easy to point fingers, and that's worth acknowledging up front. Feuds with practically every sister have defined her time on television. Messy breakups with Vince and JR left wreckage that played out publicly for years. Bridges she burned didn't even seem to exist until she set them on fire. Recent headlines accused her of crossing a line with someone connected to Tony, and her denial came through tears and visible shock during a heated moment on the show when Tawanda implied she'd gotten involved with one of Tony's romantic interests.
I don't steal anything.
You don't. You stole men.
Who's the man that I stole?
Tony's. You slept with them
Oh,
a few times.
Who? What man?
Oh, you're such a liar. Such a liar.
The cameras captured her disbelief that her own sisters would think something like that about her. And then came the situation with their niece, Ashley, which added another layer of chaos nobody saw coming. Ashley had gone viral on social media discussing a difficult situation from her past, one involving boundaries that someone connected to the family had crossed. Names stayed out of the public conversation, but the family clearly understood who she meant. Tamar announced plans to give Ashley a platform on her podcast to tell her story, and what happened next shocked her. A cease and desist letter arrived at her personal home. According to Tamar, her sisters tried to shut down her entire business just to keep that conversation from happening. New headlines about Tamar surface every few months at this point, and people have grown genuinely exhausted watching the cycle repeat. Here's where things take an interesting turn though. Tamar herself has started speaking more openly about where her behavior actually comes from, and she's not pointing at her sisters or her exes or her failed business ventures. The finger points directly at her mother, Miss Evelyn. The patterns Tamar struggles with, the grudges and explosive reactions and inability to release anything, none of it appeared out of nowhere, according to her. Decades of watching her mother operate the exact same way created the template she's been following her whole life. And once you start examining the evidence, once you really pay attention to how this family has operated behind closed doors, arguing against her becomes difficult. The year 2000 marked the end of a 35-year marriage between Evelyn and Michael Braxton. Teenagers when they wed, practically children themselves, they raised 6 kids together through every kind of season a family can experience. Michael's unfaithfulness ended it all. Not a single affair, but multiple women over the years, including Wanda, the woman he married after the divorce became final. Infidelity destroys people, and nobody disputes that. Finding out the person you built everything with has been betraying you can break anyone completely. What happened after the divorce, though? That's where the damage to the entire family really began. Evelyn never released any of it. And when that statement gets made, it means never in the most literal sense possible. More than 20 years after the papers were signed, she still spoke about Michael and Wanda with the same raw bitterness, as if the wounds were fresh from yesterday. Therapy sessions that aired on the reality series captured her admitting she didn't want them anywhere near her space, calling them miserable and seeming to take satisfaction imagining their unhappiness. Michael shared his own perspective during those sessions, and what he revealed shed light on why the marriage fell apart in the first place. Submitting to Evelyn constantly had become his reality. He admitted finding any excuse not to come home happened regularly because the environment suffocated him. Misery and feeling trapped defined his existence in that house, and eventually he looked for comfort somewhere else. None of that excuse is cheating, but it paints a more complicated picture than the simple story of a good woman wronged by a bad man. The divorce ending should have allowed the children to process what happened and maintain relationships with both parents. Evelyn reportedly had different plans, though. Choosing sides became mandatory. Standing with your father meant standing against your mother. No middle ground existed, and she made sure everyone felt the consequences of their choice. Tracy learned this lesson harder than anyone. Cancer took her in 2022 after a private battle, and she'd been the sister who lived closest to their father in Maryland. Wanting relationships with both parents seems reasonable for any adult child, but Evelyn reportedly never forgave her for it. Tension between mother and daughter lasted years, possibly right up until Tracy took her final breath. Let that sink in for a moment. A mother holding resentment toward her own daughter for decades because she refused to completely abandon her father. That goes beyond hurt into something deeper and far more damaging. Tamar chose a different path as the youngest. Siding firmly with her mother during the divorce created an extremely close bond, one that crossed into unhealthy territory according to people who followed the family for years. Major decisions didn't happen without running them past Evelyn first. Every relationship needed approval. Every career move required discussion. Every conflict demanded Evelyn's input before Tamar could even figure out how she felt about it. Codependency took root and still shows up in how Tamar moves through the world today. Her mother's worldview became her worldview. Her mother's grudges became her grudges. The belief that she was always right and everyone else was the problem transferred directly from one generation to the next. Guilt became Evelyn's weapon of choice for keeping her daughters in line. Raising 6 children as a single mother after Michael left gave her a card she could play anytime someone challenged her. All that sacrifice, all those years of struggle, how dare they question her wishes or go against her decisions? That guilt kept the daughters compliant, even as adults. Anyone who pushed back got shut down immediately. Her word stayed final. Her perspective remained the only one that mattered. The daughters learned early that falling in line beat dealing with the consequences of resistance. Growing up in a home where one parent treats bitterness like oxygen changes children, whether they realize it or not. Lessons get absorbed without anyone teaching them directly. Forgiveness starts looking like weakness. Grudges seem normal, even necessary for survival. Wronging someone means they hold on to it forever, and make sure you know about it constantly. Moving on doesn't happen. Healing doesn't happen. The wound gets nursed and allowed to define every relationship going forward. Look at where the Braxton sisters stand now. Women in their 40s and 50s who can't manage a simple family dinner without accusations flying across the table. Beefing over incidents from years ago consumes their energy. Communication without explosions and tears seems impossible for them. A fascinating comparison has started circulating among people watching this family. Tina Knowles faced a similar situation with her divorce from Matthew Knowles.
So looking at Tina Knowles and her children, and looking at Evelyn Braxton and her girls, it's proof to me that forgiveness or unforgiveness and bitterness can trickle down to your kids. But Beyonce and Solange was able to see their parents go through a healthy divorce. And then on the other hand, we can look at Miss Evelyn Braxton and see why her daughters are still on each other's neck in their 40s and 50s.
Cheating happened there too. Outside children existed. The betrayal played out publicly and humiliated her in ways most people never have to experience. Every reason to stay bitter for life applied to her situation. She chose differently though. Keeping things civil became her approach. Bad-mouthing Matthew to the media never happened. Forcing Beyonce and Solange to pick sides or punishing them for wanting their father in their lives wasn't part of her playbook. Grace and dignity defined how she moved forward, focusing on her own healing rather than spreading misery to everyone around her. Look at those daughters now, and the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Stable and successful, handling adversity with poise and maturity that seems almost effortless. The elevator incident with Jay-Z could have become years of public feuding. The family closed ranks instead, handled everything privately, and moved on with their lives. No social media wars dragging on for months. No explosive reality show moments where sisters accuse each other of unthinkable things. The Knowles family deals with issues like everyone else, but the same unhealthy cycle trapping the Braxtons doesn't seem to have them in its grip. A lot of observers believe the difference comes down to the mothers and the choices they made about handling pain. The recent season of the Braxtons made everything worse and more visible for everyone watching. A family dinner meant to clear the air nearly turned physical between Tamar and Tony. Accusations of being a mean girl came from Tony, along with statements about mental health struggles being real, and implying that Tamar's behavior pointed to deeper issues requiring professional attention. Tamar fired back hard, saying her anxiety and depression came directly from dealing with her sisters and feeling unsupported by her own family. Coming to the dinner willing to be open and honest had been her intention, she explained, but feeling attacked and ganged up on became her actual experience. Chaos took over completely after that exchange. Tony pushed the table and sisters had to physically separate them before the situation escalated further. Trina jumped between them to prevent something worse from happening. Confessionals captured Tony saying everyone has an alter ego and that Tamar had clearly met hers that night. Tamar maintained she felt perfectly fine and couldn't understand why her mental health journey had become the topic of conversation when she just wanted to address legitimate grievances about how her sisters had treated her. What Tamar did next revealed just how deep the damage runs in this family. Going online and calling her entire family dysfunctional came first. Regretting her decision to film with them again came next. Her social media accounts disappeared entirely after that, and an announcement followed about returning to therapy because her own blood had gaslighted her. Protecting her peace meant she couldn't keep subjecting herself to environments that broke her down. Nobody claims Tamar handles every situation with maturity or that she lacks personal issues. But when the youngest daughter keeps saying the family dynamic damages her mental health, examining what created that dynamic in the first place becomes necessary. Ian Levanzant worked closely with this family during their reality series, and her observations revealed things nobody wanted to hear. Sitting down with Michael gave her his perspective, and then she delivered hard truths to everyone. The daughters are being held emotionally hostage by their mother's bitterness toward their father, she pointed out. The elephant in the room that nobody wants to discuss is Evelyn Braxton's attitude. Holding on to resentment defines her. Making everything about herself defines her. Poisoning her daughters against their father and possibly against each other defines her. Getting Evelyn and Michael on the same page would free those daughters from a decades-old war they're still fighting. Ianla suggested doing that would require Evelyn to accomplish something she's shown zero ability or willingness to do, though. Letting go. Online conversations about this family have shifted in real time as people reevaluate everything they thought they knew. Comments now describe Evelyn as representing the kind of damaging mother who raises mentally scarred women, pretending to have it all together on the outside. Others identify her as the main problem who held it over her kids' heads, that she raised them alone while forcing them to stick together despite obvious and deep-seated issues with each other. Creating an environment where the sisters can't be honest because doing so would mean exposing their mother is another accusation being leveled at her regularly. Tamar might be loud and messy, but she's also the only one willing to say out loud what everyone else fears admitting, and that might make her the brave one rather than the villain. An uncomfortable truth sits at the center of all this that nobody wants to face. Tamar gets made the scapegoat because of her mouth and her personality. Saying what she thinks without filtering happens constantly, and it's rarely pretty or polished. Her sisters aren't paragons of healthy communication either, though. Tony, with all her grace and poise and Grammy Awards, allegedly blocked Tamar on social media and then publicly called her out for it on her birthday instead of just picking up the phone like a normal sister. Tawanda has admitted she doesn't reach out to Tamar the way she does to the others, even while claiming she always answers when Tamar calls. Trina carries her own grief and trauma from being present when Tracy took her last breath. The dysfunction runs through every single one of them, not just the youngest. Dysfunction appearing out of nowhere doesn't happen. Teaching and modeling create it. Years of watching how the adults in your life handle pain and conflict and relationships embed those patterns deeply. A teacher who never learned to forgive, never learned to let go, never learned to prioritize her children's well-being over her own hurt feelings can only pass down what she knows. The children couldn't have turned out differently because they learned what they lived. And what they lived was a mother who couldn't release a grudge even if it meant saving her own family. The Braxton women possess undeniable talent. Incredible voices have touched millions of people around the world. Their reality shows broke ground for representation and showed Black families in all their complicated glory. Beneath the success and the awards and the headlines and the famous names sits a family that's been hurting for a very long time though. The cycle keeps continuing until they're willing to look at the root of that hurt, really examine it without deflecting or making excuses or protecting the wrong people. Passing it down to the next generation, the same way it was passed to them, remains the only other option. The next time a headline appears about Tamar going off on social media or the sisters beefing over something that seems petty, asking a different question might serve everyone better. Instead of wondering what's wrong with Tamar, wondering what happened to this family that made them this way opens up more honest territory. And the most important question of all asks, who set the tone everyone's been following for decades? The answer might not be who you expect. What do you think? Is Evelyn Braxton the hidden villain of this story, or is she just another wounded person doing the best she can with what she knows? Sound off below.